Greetings from Toronto, Ontario. I am Shmuel Neft, otherwise known as Rabbi NFT.
And I'm Dovie Keebman, joining you from Erie, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Millennial Rabbis podcast.
As Chabad rabbis born in the 90s, we bridged the gap between two very distinct Jewish communities on opposite shores of Lake Erie.
Join us as we navigate the complexities of the modern world, offering fresh perspectives on the challenges we face today.
Let's make sense of it all together.
All right, welcome to another amazing episode of Millennial Rabbis podcast. Me and Rabbi Shmuel, we have had tremendous amounts of sleep. We are well rested. We are ready to go. Everything I just said, except for the amazing part, is absolute baloney. But we are ready to go. So let's get into it.
Let's go.
Yeah, so Rabbi Shmuel, what's on the menu for today? What are we eating? What are we discussing?
We decided that we are going to discuss something that is crucial to understand for every single person that's listening to this podcast and not listening to this podcast, maybe will listen to this podcast, and every person in the world is an understanding of something called Hashgacha Pratit, divine intervention. Now,
Can you say it in Ashkenazic for the Ashkenazis among us?
Oh, Hashgacha Pratit. It's so funny because you talk about divine oriented things happening when you have crises. Many times that's like one of our coping mechanisms. It seems when it comes to having a crisis, just that's what it is. But really, I'm saying it's something we have to be conscientious of in all times, whether for the bad times or the good times, or just when things are going kind of normal. But happened to be we had this conversation off camera a little while ago about specifically referring to my series of at least on the surface level unfortunate events, which definitely in each of those things it was a divinely oriented moment, although some of them or all of them I haven't yet realized what the divinely oriented nature of them was, but it's part of the real life practice, that you have to go through in order to kind of swallow this idea. But before we talk about our own experiences, why don't you give us some background on the divinely oriented nature of life?
So you talk about the divinely oriented situation. It sounds like guru spirituality or something or other. I don't know what. It's very, very simple. God runs the world. Hashem's in control of everything, and He's got a mission. He's got a goal in place for the universe, and He orchestrates everything to that end. Every single detail. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, spoke about the idea of a leaf falling off a tree. The fact that this particular leaf fell off the tree and it landed on the ground and landed on this particular spot on the ground is divinely ordained, because it's important that this leaf falls on this part of the ground.
In this particular moment.
What?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
And not just that, but as the leaf is falling, it turns many times in the wind, but the amount of times that it turns in the wind is also extremely crucial and completely nuanced and precise, because that's also important and relevant to the grand scheme of things. How much more so things that happen with people, the Jews, is I don't know, infinitely, but let's say infinitely. It's a good word, infinitely more so. So here's the thing with Hashgacha Pratit, divine supervision. I don't still haven't found the best English translation for this.
Divine intervention.
No, it's not intervention. It's not intervention.
Intervention seems like he's kind of just like sticking himself in there. No, he's like
he's not there and he's sticking himself in. That's
divine orientation. Divine orientation.
Divine orchestration. Is that a word?
Orchestration definitely is a word. Divine situation.
Ooh.
Let's very vague.
What do you think is a good way to translate this and to explain it to others in a way that's appreciated to the best of anyone's abilities? Leave your comments in the comment section or send us a message if you know how. Here's the thing. Here's how it works. It's always around us. It's always happening. Hashem's running the show. Every single detail, every single part of every occurrence that happens in the world. The more you look for it, the more you see it. not because the more you look for it, the more it happens, because it's always happening. Rather, the more you look for it, the more you notice it. Now, regular people, just day-to-day lives, they're not thrown into circumstances usually for them to notice things like this. It says in the Hasidic books that business people specifically have a huge advantage, that they get to see this openly and clearly because they're involved in business. They're involved in the world in a way that things come and go. Things are hopping and bopping and very much seem random. But when they notice patterns, they notice things that happen to their benefit or seemingly to their loss until, God willing, they see the purpose of that. So I think it'd be so. I'll just bring it back to us. Me and you, we're doing the Rebbe's work, and we're trying our best. And we deal with a lot of interesting situations, which not necessarily do other people deal with, for better or for worse. And we try to notice when these things are coming our way, and we go, "Oh, Hashem, you are doing incredible things, and I'm loving this." And sometimes we get confused, and we're like, "Well, I don't know what to think of this," and hopefully it all turns out for the good openly. I'll share an experience that I went through in the past 2-3 years since we moved here, which was it was a longer story than I'm going to say, but just simply because it just took some time, but I'll squeeze it into a few minutes. Where I clearly saw the Hashem's hand in managing what was going on here. He wants that all of his people, the Jewish people, should to do mitzvahs and learn Torah and to connect with him in the best way they can. So that's part of what we're doing. We're trying to find Jews and to connect with them. Some Jews are very hard to find because one, they don't know anything about us. They don't know what Chabad is. They don't know what Torah is. They don't know what Judaism is really, even if they're Jewish. Some Jews are not interested specifically; they're avoiding, and there's a lot of different categories and ranges. So finding Jewish people is sometimes a little bit difficult, especially in a place like I am in, that there's not very many people in general. How many people are in Toronto? How many did we discuss this?
How many Jews?
People.
4 million just in the city?
4 million. Erie has
2 million?
95,000, I think. Small chunk.
Lucky you. Less people, less problems, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to have that daiga, actually.
Okay. I mean, you should have the nechas without the daiga. Okay, so this started, when was it? Close to 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I don't know if it was back that far. It was about a month or so before Purim, I believe. A few weeks before Purim.
Purim must be, like, Erie during Purim must be just absolutely, like, upside down.
It is upside down, just not as intense as other places. So it was a Sunday morning, and I get a phone call. And on the caller ID, before I pick up the phone, I see that the area code is 972 with a long string of numbers. And I said, 972, that's Israel. Who's calling me from Israel? Okay. So I pick up the phone. I say, hello. And there's this guy on the other end, and he's rattling off to me in Hebrew. Now, I speak Hebrew. I don't speak a fluent Hebrew, but I speak Hebrew. I understand Hebrew to an extent. And it happened to be Hashem gave me the ability in this particular conversation. I understood everything the guy said. He wasn't speaking slowly, and I was able to respond to him appropriately, which I thought was pretty amazing for myself. So why is he calling? He has an ex-relative, meaning a relative through marriage that was divorced years ago, who passed away in New York City. Okay. So why is he calling me? I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm hours and hours away. What's the connection? He tells me that this person who passed away, his ex-wife, her daughter, both live in Erie, Pennsylvania. I said, that sounds very strange. I would probably have heard of these people. He's calling me. They're all Jewish. Israeli, sounds like. So By the way, if the people who I'm referring to in the story, if you're watching this, I hope you enjoy the story.
Are you saying that you should have known that these Israeli people were in Erie because like the smell of the shakshuka from their house should have permeated the whole city because the whole city is tiny
I
and
would have thunk. So I couldn't believe it. I said, really? You sure we're here? He said, yeah. So the Chevra Kadisha, the burial society in New York, so they were taking care of the mace of the deceased. And they were actually transporting the body from New York by car from New York to Erie, Pennsylvania, after the necessary burial preparations, according to Jewish law. Okay, so he asks me. He said they're burying him in a Jewish cemetery over there, but there's not going to be a minyan. There's not going to be anything. Could you please try? I'm asking you, just a personal request. Can you please try to arrange for something for him? He was a relative of mine. I care for him, and if you could arrange a minyan, that would be incredible. To say Kaddish, the person who passed away, his neshama, his soul should have an elevation. It's super important. Even if not, you can arrange a minyan. If you can at least say some tehillim by his graveside, anything would be tremendous. We had just moved there about a year before. We didn't really know too many people, so I said, I'll try my best. This is important. So I reached out to a few local Jews that I knew. Some of them said they couldn't help. I'm sorry, I'm busy, this, that. One guy who lives in Edinburgh, which is a 25-minute drive from here, he said, sure, I'd be happy to help out. It was very, very nice of him. He actually came. So I think there was one other person that came from here. But it was difficult. We didn't really know too many Jews then. And I reached out to people I knew in Pittsburgh, a few young rabbinical students that were there. I reached out to, I think, Buffalo. I think I reached out to people in Buffalo, and also Cleveland. There's a couple of there's a Jewish, a nice Jewish man who has a business here, actually lives in Cleveland, and I asked if he'd be able to help out, and he brought himself and two other guys. It all worked out. We had a minyan at the end of the day, and we
you officiated this funeral.
Huh?
You officiated this funeral?
The thing was, it wasn't a funeral; it was more of a burial.
Okay.
I spoke, but so who was at this burial, this funeral? There was the minyan. There was the grave diggers. There was the ex-wife and the daughter, another relative of sorts, and that was it. That was really it. So this was actually my first time, technically my second time involved in such a thing. So I had to ask some rabbis for guidance. Also, the person who drove the car to Erie, he was a part of the burial society. He was part of the minyan as well. So Kaddish was said for him, and it's weird because you can't really call this beautiful. It wasn't. It was a very sad event, but there was some sort of strange beauty to it. In fact, the ex-wife, she was touched. She was absolutely touched, and she deeply appreciated what we did for her, and she couldn't believe. She couldn't believe. Till today, she doesn't believe that there are Jews who don't know them, that they came out of their way. They drove up to 2 hours from Pittsburgh to come and be at a funeral for a few minutes and leave, just to help out. She could not believe it. I also couldn't believe it. It was very surprising. I don't know, not surprising enough. So, I wasn't shocked. How could you really come and help? No, but it was. I don't know the right word. Fine. Fast forward. So fine. We invited them over for a Shabbos meal, and the family, and we became a little close. The next thing that happened was a month or so later, we invited them for a challah bake, if I'm not mistaken, to bake challah in our house for Shabbos. Before Shabbos, not on Shabbos, God forbid. And if you're bored of the rattling, Shmuel, you can interrupt whenever you want.
I'm listening to every second.
Oh, you're going to count how many words I'm saying? Okay. So we invited them as well to join this. They're happy to come. So actually, the daughter has a daughter herself. So this ex-wife is actually a grandmother. She's
wow.
A baby, or she should say a savta. She's not a baby. This is a lady who corrects me when I say Shabbos. She says,
Yeah, oh,
Shabbat.
yeah. That type.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. So, what happened next? So then, during this challah bake, it might have been a Haman Tashbake maybe for Purim. So they're talking, and my wife says it's incredible because there's not really any other Israelis in Erie. So the grandmother's Israeli, and it's like the ex-wife, the daughter was raised in Erie, so she's very much American. Especially the granddaughter, she's like all the way. So I was saying there's no other Israelis in Erie, and then she responded, there's no Israelis. It's so hard because it's a different kind of culture here, but I mean there are a couple of Israelis, and she said, "What do you mean there's Israelis? I don't know any Israelis." And she mentioned one person. Oh, that person, right? Because we tried to connect with, but then whatever. And then she said, "Oh, there's also this other person." So my wife's ears perk up and say, well, "Who's this person?" And she said, "Oh no, you whatever. You don't know them. That doesn't matter." Like, no, back and forth. And my wife said, "I want to meet her." And she said, "Fine. I mean, like I knew her a few years ago, but we fell out of touch. I bet she doesn't even live here anymore." So my wife said, "If you have her number and can you call her? I would love to meet her." So she said, "Let me see if I have a number for her with her name. Let's call her." Called her up, and the friendship blossoms again. They're babbling to each other in Hebrew, and
wow.
Yeah. So she finally, after that calms down, she says, "I'm at the Chabad in Erie." And she said, "What Chabad in Erie?" She's like, "There's a Chabad in Erie." She's like, "There's no Chabad in Erie." It's like back and forth. It's an argument. This is what we call in the Rebbe's talks. We call them machlekes b'metzias. It's an argument about a fact. So she says, "Do you still live in Erie?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Do you still live in the house that you lived in?" She's like, "Oh no, we moved to a different neighborhood." And she said, "What neighborhood you moved to?" And she said, "The name of the neighborhood." And me and my wife, like our eyes bulged, and we said, "That's our neighborhood." "What do you mean?" So she said, "What street do you live on?" The name of the street, right around the corner from us. What? Very strange. We have a small little neighborhood. So we got all excited. It must have been challah because there was fresh challah coming out of the oven. And I took a challah out of the oven. I didn't take challah out of the oven. That would have burnt my hand. I took a challah that had come out of the oven for a while already. And I ran around the corner, and lo and behold, there's an Israeli lady living around the corner from me. And I gave her a challah, and we made a connection with her and her family. And she has a few kids. That's stage 2. I'm shortening the story here. Stage 3 is I get to know her and her husband a little bit. And one day the husband, he reaches out to me and he says, "Rabbi, do you know this and this guy?" I said, "I never heard the name before." He said, "Oh, he's a Jewish guy in here." I said, "He's a Jewish guy in here? Well, I gotta meet him." So he said, I spoke to him. I saw him on the street. I gave him your number and I said, "You're going to call him. Here's his number." He said he's interested in connecting with his roots. I said, "Oh, okay, great." So I called him up. We had a long conversation, and he knew his mother was Jewish. His father wasn't. He knew he had a Jewish connection. He didn't consider himself Jewish. He didn't have that sort of way of looking at it. But I explained to him. I said, "You're 100% Jewish. If your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. That's the way it works." So just from one phone call, okay, we met 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's going to continue. Actually, 9. There's a 9th one. That's a different story.
Wow.
Because of this, and
like tripled your
all
community.
these things had to happen, and if there was one part that was out of place, it wouldn't have happened the way it had to happen. But this is the way that Hashem orchestrates things, that we should meet Jews, and we should help bring them closer to their roots, connect them to Hashem, and bring Mashiach. This is how it is. And when I'm sitting here being part of this, and I'm watching this, and I'm going, "Whoa, this is crazy." It's exciting. It's not always like this. Sometimes I don't notice, and sometimes I'm confused, and sometimes I'm lost, and I'm human. But when I make the effort to look for the Hashgacha Pratit, using the same word we said earlier, it really picks me up. It gives me an energy. And I encourage our viewers to try to do this in your own life. Try to look for those moments. In fact, I just heard recently. Then Shmuel, you'll take the mic if you want to. I think you
I'm
first.
the quiet one this episode, huh?
So there was a Jew from Minnesota, Velvet Green.
Bubble Green.
Thank you, Velvet
You
Green.
almost got excommunicated.
Velvet Green, Professor Velvet Green. He worked as a microbiologist for NASA, different things. Anyway, he wasn't raised as a observant Jew. He was a Jew, and slowly over time he met with the Chabad emissary over there in Minnesota, Rebbe Feller, and over time he became observant. He had a relationship with the Rebbe. He was a thinky person. He was a philosopher. He was an intellectual. So he was one time had a private audience with the Rebbe, and it's bringing this up point that faith and reason they're really two different categories. They don't really. It's not like one contradicts the other. So instead of proving to this Professor Green about his questions that he had about God and the universe and this and that, the Rebbe told him, "I want you to start keeping a diary." Oh, a diary? Okay, that sounds easy, but a specific kind of diary. He said, "What kind of diary?" The Rebbe told him, whenever you notice an occurrence in your life that's a little out of the ordinary, where you see that something was arranged, something happened that so it shouldn't have happened, but it happened. It was everything fell into place that it happened in this particular manner that Hashem arranged it. So write it down. When you notice, write it down. You can imagine what doing such a thing does to a person over time when they start to actively notice and they're looking for it and they notice and they write it down. They put a pen on paper and it becomes very real to them. So it's a good idea to try. Actually, I started doing such a thing a few years ago. It stopped. I should start it again. It was actually very exciting.
It's awesome.
Go ahead, please.
What about
this topic?
What about the divine orientation stories that you don't see a good result in, or you see or you can't determine why that happened to you? What do you say?
Hands up in the air. I mean, I put my hands up in the air and say, Hashem, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know why you're putting me through this. I know it's good. I believe it's good. I don't see that it's good. Can you give me your perspective, please? It's
that one. Those are so you made it. You said a great story about clearly divinely oriented. Kind of, you see that someone's definitely standing over and putting the pieces together and making it happen. And just otherwise, if it didn't happen, if these very, very nuanced, specific things didn't happen, the whole thing wouldn't have happened, and it just outright picture perfect meant to be. But sometimes things happen, and they could be the result could be less than great. It can be even damaging or upsetting, or God knows what.
Example, it wasn't necessarily upsetting, but it was. Today I don't know why, but yesterday I go to a local prison once a week, and I was in the middle of giving a Torah class to a couple people, a couple of the inmates, and suddenly on the loudspeaker there is a tornado issue warning. Everyone needs to go down to the basement immediately. Great. And I had to run out the door as soon as I was done my job for the day. I had to run to go drive somewhere, and I couldn't be late. I had to leave at 3:30, but the problem was it was only 1:00, but 1:20, whatever it was. But I know these lockdowns they don't last 3 minutes. So I went downstairs with all the inmates and all the other staff, and we're just kind of standing and waiting around, just waiting and waiting. Finally, after like 35 minutes, they said we can go back upstairs, but we can't leave the building. Finally, at like 3:10, they said we can leave the building. I don't understand why it happened. While I was standing down there, just mindlessly thinking in my own head, I was like, what's the message I at least could take from this? Why it happened, I don't know. But what message can I take from this? What lesson? I started coming things in my head. Sometimes tornadoes come by in our lives, and you have to something to go underground. You can't if you stay on top and keep doing what you're doing, you'll get blown away in the wind. So you have to go underground. You have to be, so to speak, still and not active in a sense. And it feels hard. It feels boring and mindless, and you feel like you're not accomplishing anything. But this is where you need to be until the storm blows over. That's just things going in my head, but I don't really understand why it happened.
Well, For those that don't follow me on the different various platforms that I project my life on,
How dare you?
What?
I said, how dare you? How do you not follow Rabbi Neff?
That first of all, that's we have to have a talk. But besides for that, so I had a series of unfortunate events in the last couple of weeks. The most recent was last week, my engine overheating and me basically thinking that my car is going to burn up in the middle of doing one of my favorite social service projects, we'll say like that. I deliver food packages from the local food bank. So I don't know what the reason was for that, except for to rob me of $800 to keep my car alive for another day. Then I had a flood through 2.5 weeks ago in my basement that we're gonna have to put an insurance claim for. Still figuring out why that happened, but the first of the series of unfortunate events was 3 weeks ago. Most people that know me know this story like the back of their hand at this point, because everyone.
I know this. Not even here. Just turn off the cameras.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. It's our very, very sad story of losing our passports in California. Which I'm not going to say the whole story because I do want to say a different story related to it. Where we basically lost our passports, missed our flights, had to pay $2,000 US to fly to Buffalo to then walk across the border with our driver's licenses and hope that they would let us in, which they did, and then make it home before Shabbat so we could actually be with our children. And then a half a week later, getting a phone call from the rental car company that after we searched through our car and had them figure something out because we knew that we lost it at in the rental car, call us and say that they found our passports.
Oh.
Now, we got the passports back, and I'm trying to, get compensation for the seemingly negligent behavior of the employees at Alamo Rental Car. Hopefully they hear this. But when we booked an 11 p.m. red-eye flight through Washington, D.C. to Buffalo. And when I arrived to Washington, D.C. in the really, really early in the morning, I remembered one of my favorite stories that anyone that comes to my house, almost anyone that comes to my house for Shabbat meal, that lasts, one of those long-lasting Shabbat meals where we pull out stories and have these long conversations, knows this story. This story is one of my quintessential favorite stories, which is summer of 2016. I basically finished yeshiva that year in Morristown, my first of 2 years in Morristown. I went home for a couple of weeks, came back to New York for Gimel Tammuz and my birthday, and then me and a very good friend, Dovie Berger.
Rabbi Neff's birthday is coming up in a couple weeks.
It's coming up. Yeah, it's coming up in 2 weeks. If you're local in Toronto and you haven't been invited yet to my birthday, please let me know. I would like to invite you.
You can send the JRCC of Rockford donations of $1,000 and up.
That's right. And I hope you, before any donations, I would hope, Dovie, that you would make the drive.
Oh, for bringing.
That's right.
Back home if I'm drunk.
So the story is like this. Levi Berger is a good buddy of mine. Shout out Levi. Just saw him in Montreal, lives in Montreal. We're flying to Kazakhstan for the summer. We're gonna do 2 weeks in Kazakhstan and then go to Ukraine. Because we had camp in Ukraine afterwards. Before we had camp, I actually went to did some volunteering in Ukraine as well before camp because of a couple of weeks. Anyway, the point is that we were super excited to come out of my birthday for bringing. Next morning early, we go to the Ohel. We pray at the Rebbe's resting place, and we go to JFK, and we get to Terminal 1 in JFK, and we get on a plane to Vienna, Austria, our stopover. Now, I scored the coolest plane ticket ever because we flew into Vienna, Austria at 8 a.m. and we were supposed to leave Vienna, Austria at 8 p.m. That's a 12-hour layover. He had a cousin in Vienna, and then we crashed his place, and we made ourselves breakfast, and we just had a ball walking around Vienna and checking out and urban exploring, which is something I really love to do. We get to the airport in Vienna, and without getting into too much detail, flight was delayed. The flight boarded. The flight was then delayed another 4 hours into the night. And at 2 a.m., after sitting on the tarmac on the plane for 4 hours, they told us to deplane and to go back into the airport. and instead of Austrian Airlines, who I despise until this day, instead of getting us on another plane, they literally rocked the one night shift guy rocked up with blankets and water bottles and said, "Sorry guys, gonna have to spend the night in the terminal." So we spent the night in the terminal. Basically, the whole night we couldn't sleep, so we were basically in the smoking room talking to random people the whole night. In the morning, we woke up after maybe falling asleep for about 45 minutes, sat in line for 5 hours, watched people faint, watched people break out and be carried out by paramedics, watched people fist fight and scream and yell at each other. And finally, after getting to the front of the line, we were rebooked into a completely different flight from a different airline because the entire Austrian Airlines was totally like wrecked for some reason. Got different explanations every single time. In short, we were rebooked on a flight to Paris, from Paris to Kazakhstan. All right. We were exhausted. I slept. That was the only flight that I slept. That was asleep before it took off, and I woke up when it landed, from Vienna to Paris, and I was wrecked. Not just exhausted, but I was just like emotionally wrecked because this was a trip I was looking forward to for months. It was all meticulously planned down. In Kazakhstan, you only had 2 weeks to be there without having to have a visa, so time was limited. We had a plan, and you lose an entire day of your trip. Okay. Not only you lose the entire day of your trip, you're exhausted, and our suitcases didn't come for another several days after that. Crazy stuff. Levi and I are walking through the terminal to get to our connecting flight at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and David Zaltzman calls me. He was in Morristown, spending a part of the summer, and
When is he going to be on here?
What?
When is he going to be on here?
No, I'm not going to let him on here.
What?
No, he's not allowed. For now. People think it's nepotism. But the point is that he gets on the phone and he starts pumping me up and giving me encouragement and whatever, because I was super, super down. And then he just like, I don't know exactly how this played out on the other end, but it was something along the lines of he saw one of my teachers, Lema Wilhelm. So anyone who knows what Lema Wilhelm is kind of will understand how awkward the story is. And he's like, "Oh, it's Lema. Here, take the phone." And I think he just handed the phone to Lema. And Lema's like, Shmuley, what's going on? And I told him the story, and he's like, sit down, open up the book Hayom Yom, which for those who don't know, is one of quintessential Chabad book of daily wisdom to live with day by day. He says, sit down and learn it. He says, because you don't know why you're there. There must be a reason why you are for 4 hours schlepping through Charles de Gaulle Airport. And if at the very least, you should use that moment to spiritually purify Charles de Gaulle Airport or Paris or whatever. And this is like one of the basic tenets of Hasidic thought, which is a person never finds themselves in any place, any given time for no reason. If you end up on a unexpected stopover in Paris, it must mean that Paris needs you there. We need to bring some sort of good energy to Paris. And so I am miserable. This is what we're talking about 3 weeks ago. I'm coping with the thoughts, which God forbid I would never wish on anybody else, that I will not be home for Shabbat with my children. They will be alone, not with their parents like they were supposed to be. It is one of the worst feelings ever. It was at the end of a fantastic trip. Okay. And here I am at Washington, D.C. airport, absolutely wrecked after a red-eye flight from Los Angeles and just totally emotionally drained and blown out. And I remember the story that I love to tell people and that I love to make to take this lesson out of it. I'm like, dude, sit down and learn something. You must be in Dulles Airport for a reason. Dulles Airport must need you right now. And that's what I did. And so there's the divine intervention that it's clear, and I have many of those stories that I could tell you, and you have many more of those stories, and I am so in love with this idea that I could tell you how seemingly accidental things that happened 8 years ago are the reason why I'm here today. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I love it. And so there is a reason for every. There is a reason for every. Yeah, as they say in Hebrew, yesh siba lemisiba. There's a reason for this situation, and you're not always going to have the luxury of knowing why.
No.
All you have to do is in the moment, stop yourself, think, introspect, and try to envision the possibilities, the potential reasons why you're in that situation. I just this story is on top of my mind. I want to. We're over time already, but a very quick story. This is because it's this time that we're in right now. There's a story about a soldier or a police officer. I don't remember, but someone who was off duty. And on October 7th, and he got the call, like very many thousands of people did, and I don't think he was in the localities near Gaza, and this is a known story, and there's more specifics to it, but it's just the beyond story. And he shows up to his base or to wherever, and things are hectic, and things are just everything's all over the place, and he grabs the first M16 that he could find. There's many magazines that he can take, and he drives in the direction, I think by himself, in the direction of where the terrorists are. I think it was in Sderot. That's what I'm trying to remember. That's what I'm starting to remember. And on his way, he notices that the M16 that he got is an old piece of trash. Okay, and anybody that knows anything about guns knows that old guns that are not well maintained can be rendered useless very, very fast. They jam, they malfunction, and he's noticing that he's got a rusty old thing. He is trying to cycle through, ammunition through the rifle, and it keeps getting stuck, and it's not. So what do? You're literally feet away from an active battle. How can you imagine? You got these blood cult Satanist lowlives trying to kill everything in their path, and you are what's tasked to stop it, and you are risking your life, and if you don't have a weapon, you're a dead man. Can you imagine what happens in that kind of moment? He gets to the heat, and at this point it's all reflex, it's all adrenaline, and he cycles his rifle, and the round goes into the chamber, and boom, he starts firing off. And for an extended period of time, this guy was engaged in battle with terrorists, and there was not a single malfunction. There were probably hundreds of rounds that went through his gun, and he killed terrorists. He saved lives. He saved his own life. He saved the lives of God knows how many other people. Rounds are going through the weapon nonstop. One magazine, next magazine. Things finally calm down after hours of battle. He is, like I said, hundreds of rounds have gone through this weapon. And when the coast is clear and everything started to kind of settle down, the gun jammed again. Guys, there's a God. He's there. He's there, and if you don't see it, you should come onto the podcast. These kind of stories that make me jump out of my pants and say, "This is God."
I heard after
God.
I heard after that story. It could be two things, but they basically he came back to, I don't know which base, I don't know where, and he gave in his gun, and they looked it over, and they said, "What did you do out there? This gun doesn't work." I don't know if it's accurate.
Yeah, something like that. It's not normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. God is there. God is over us. God is watching us. And we have the ability and the merit to be cognizant of that, not just when times are tough, but when times are good, and even when times are just regular.
Yeah, ambassadors of light. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, Dovie.
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Sponsors. Oh, wait.
We don't have sponsors. If you would like to advertise your business, advertise yourself because you have narcissistic tendencies like me, okay, and you're willing to pay money for it, like me, then sponsor an episode of the Millennial Rabbis podcast. Guys, this podcast is on fire. The analytics that we are seeing, it's just the viewership is going up. Like,
oh my gosh, I think we have too much fun.
People are listening, and so your best business decision or your best spiritual charity decision is sponsor Millennial Rabbis podcast, MRP. Dovie,
Yeah.
as always, it's awesome to sit down with you, and it's great that we created this podcast to be able to do that. It's Thursday night. This is going up on Tuesday. This weekend is a long weekend here in Canada, and we are going south to visit my parents. And as anybody that knows us knows, on the way to Pittsburgh or on the way back from Pittsburgh, the obligatory stop is Casa de Kievman. So we'll see you, hopefully, God willing. It won't be in your hair too much. But otherwise, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. In another 2 weeks, we're going to have a sweet, sweet episode with another guest. So subscribe, like, share, talk, even criticize, because any publicity is good publicity. And
do more Jewish.
See you. Of course. You cannot end a podcast without doing more Jewish, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great, great day.
Good night, good day whenever you watch this.
That's right. See you.
Bye-bye.